Hey, what's going on, you guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Mace. I'm coming to you from Canada. Yeah, I'm in North America, but the part that has some sanity left. Say no more. Why some people drive on the right and some on the left? Obviously, in Canada, we drive on the right. In Australia, you guys drive on the left. And, you know, there's other countries like the UK, drive on the left. I am kind of curious. I think I've looked into this topic before, but my memory is just fading. My memory's fading, man. My memory's fading away like a piece of fluff in the wind on a dark, stormy evening into the sea. What's even happening in this video? Let's check it out. Why?
A few years ago, my friend and I went to Hawaii and we rented a car to get around. Here's me on day one, the car still in the parking lot, looking a little terrified at the prospect of driving. Not because I was tired or
Because you're sitting on the left?
because I hate driving. It was because in Australia, you drive on the left side of the road, whereas in the US, you drive on the right. Most countries in the world, about 2/3, drive on the right side, which leaves one.
So all these ones drive on the left. Okay, interesting. It's weird. I was thinking to myself this morning, like, what if I had to drive on the left? Would I be shocked or confused or...
1/3 that drives on the left. You might be wondering why people who drive on the left don't just switch over to the right. The thing is, left-hand side traffic was the worldwide norm for a long time. So how come a split now exists? Well, the reason boils down to two main factors. One, the fact that most people are right-handed, and two, the fact that countries were using different forms of transportation at the time formalized road rules began to emerge. Back in the
I don't necessarily see why, if you're right-handed, that influence driving on the right.
Middle Ages, way before cars existed, people mainly traveled around on horseback or by foot. People kept to the left so they could keep their dominant hand closer to the center of the road.
Oh, okay.
Remember, this was a time when people often carried weapons on them, such as swords, knives, or daggers, while traveling because of bandits and outlaws. Also, people almost always mount horses from the left side, and it's safer to mount from the roadside than in the middle of the road. This left side traveling continued for years across the world until about the time of the French Revolution. There was a big class distinction on the roads of France at the time. The
Does that have something to do with North America, this driving on the right?
wealthy would drive their carriages on the left and force poorer people to travel to the right. But by the end of the revolution, the aristocracy began traveling on the right to blend in with the lower classes, and France's roads effectively became right-side travel. So you had France traveling on the right and places like England traveling on the left. Throughout Britain, it was more a matter of custom than widespread regulation until 1835, when Parliament passed a law forcing traffic to keep left. In France, the keep right rule was established more firmly by this guy. As Napoleon conquered countries across Europe, those countries were forced to switch sides. Meanwhile, in the US,
It's Napoleon's fault?
one particular wagon was a big driving force for keeping to the right. The Conestoga wagon became popular in the late 1700s as a way to transport heavy goods. These massive wagons could hold thousands of kilograms worth of cargo and needed teams of horses to pull them along. There was no driver's seat, so the driver would usually sit on the rear left horse, so they could still hold a whip in their hand. Because of this, the wagons travelled on the right, so the driver sitting on the left would have more visibility over the rest of the road. In 1792, Pennsylvania officially passed the first keep right law in the US to this turnpike. 12 years later, New York enforced right-hand travel on all public highways, and it slowly spread across the rest of the US. In time, more and more countries shifted to the right. As they found themselves surrounded by converted land neighbors, it was just easier to follow suit.
So essentially because of those really heavy wagons.
When the US started putting steering wheels on the left, that became extra incentive to switch. Cars initially had the wheel on the right, following horse-drawn buggies. Ford was the first to put the wheel on the left, with the Model T in 1908. Initially, it was just to make disembarking easier, but car manufacturers soon realized it was better and safer for the driver to sit more towards the center of the road. And because the US is such a big car exporting country, this was an extra push for more countries to switch over to the right, so they could use the cars. Obviously, not everyone made the switch. British colonies stayed on the left and still do for the most part. And countries like Japan and Thailand that were never British colonies but had dealings with the British also kept to the left. But most countries switched to the right in the early to mid 20th century. In fact, only 3 places have...
It's always cool when you kind of take a double take when you see a vehicle with the steering wheel on the right side. When I see one around here that's been imported, it's cool.
Switched back from right to left in recent times. In Japan, Okinawa was controlled by the US after World War II and made to drive on the right. It switched back to the left on July 30th, 1978, after being returned to Japan 6 years previously. Timor-Leste switched to the left under Indonesian rule in 1975, and Samoa switched over in 2009 so they could import old Australian cars instead of more expensive US cars. The Samoans had a smooth changeover. They got a 2-day national holiday to ease traffic and had a 3-day ban on alcohol to deter accidents. But they had a relatively small population
3-day
at the
ban
time
on
of about
alcohol.
180,000 people. So what would happen in a country with a lot more people and a lot more that could go wrong? Sweden switched from left to right in 1967. With a population of about 7.8 million people at the time, there was a lot to prepare for H-Day. Road markings had to be repainted, bus stops relocated,
that's a lot of work.
intersections and one-way streets redesigned, and about 360,000 street signs changed. At precisely 5 a.m. on September 3rd, Swedes were directed to switch over to the right. The whole process cost 628 million kroner, the equivalent of more than $400 million today.
Damn.
But the country's road networks and infrastructure are a lot more sophisticated now than they were 50 years ago. Not to mention there are a lot more people and cars. A switch nowadays would be a lot harder and cost a lot more. It's the main reason why we won't see another country switching sides anytime soon. It would be a huge logistical exercise that would cost a lot more than
Seems
people are
like-
willing to spend for
Yeah, I think at this point you're stuck with it. It's ingrained.
something that isn't needed. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. In the end, it only took a day or two for us to be comfortable driving on the other side of the road, and it's probably what travellers will have to keep doing. You may have noticed that most left-side driving countries are actually islands, which helps justify not switching over. For the few that do share borders with right-side driving countries, most of the time it's a non-issue. You'd have to go through customs first, so you go through border security on one side and exit out the other. But for a few countries, they've come up with some inventive solutions.
Interesting. So essentially this comes down to a few different little things, like driving on the right. And it does make sense to have the driver on the inside closest to the other lane so they have better visibility of the road. That certainly makes sense. Cool stuff. Yeah, I don't think it's a big deal. I think I would be totally fine driving on the left. Driving in another country is always a bit of a learning curve at the beginning. I remember driving in the Philippines and you drive on the right. It's so much fun. So much fun. Because I'm just... let's just say the rules of the road are quite lax. It's kind of do what you want. And a lot of honking. Ding, 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 ding. Like, it's mainly as a hazard sound for pedestrians, people on the road. Because in the Philippines, there's so many people on the side of the roads. And there's dogs and cats and stuff. And even they know, like, to get out of the way when they hear that honk, right? And they'll get out of the roadway. You'll see little old ladies, like, you'll be honking, and they get out of the way just in the nick of time. Like, they know what they're doing. All right, cool stuff. We'll see you all soon. Peace.